Hello, 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 everybody. Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 2. Let's just take a minute and bring ourselves into the room. And we're going to bring ourselves into the room by just taking a deep breath. Because, when tech doesn't work, or when we can't find a link, or you're like, oh my God, it's on camera. I didn't know I was going to be on camera. Or all the stuff that happens that's so much part of our lives anymore, right? It gets us, I don't know, whipped into a frenzy sometimes. It does me anyway. So I want to invite you to just put your hand over your heart. Just take a couple of nice, long, deep breaths. And if you can, just take a second and look around you. We're in this beautiful space that everyone in this room is here because they have an intention to consciously create a better world. How lucky are we to be in a community of people who really want to make this world a better place? That's making me cry. That because that doesn't feel like that's my common experience sometimes, right? So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. And we're going to start with what is called an ask and receive statement. So I'm going to make a statement, and all I'm going to ask you to do is, as we get started, is for you to just repeat after me. So just repeat after me. There is a part of my being that already knows exactly how to reclaim my creative power. That part of my being is willing to inform the rest of me now. It is doing so now with grace and ease. My mind, body, and spirit are receiving this information. Information transfer is now complete. All right, that'll get us ready for what we're going to do. So welcome all of you. Yesterday we talked about how did you get to the story that you have right now? And so I talked yesterday about how pretty much any narrative that we have, any story that we have, especially one that's not working, can be distilled down into kind of a polarity, right? That usually that polarity, if we drill down deep enough, is some variation on the metaphor of victim versus victor, or winner versus loser, right? I want to talk today a little bit about what we might call the danger of human design. And in part of what I want to address is that we're conditioned to be afraid of the unknown. And we assume sometimes that if we don't know the answer or we don't have it all figured out, that somehow we're going to maybe become a victim of the unknown, right? So we try to control it by giving it labels and trying to figure out all the pieces and parts, especially if you're a first line profile. First line profiles, raise your hands. Yeah, I see you. So there are a couple of problems here. So let's break this down for a minute. Problem number 1, you're not a noun. Even though you maybe learned that in 2nd grade, you're not a noun. You are a dynamic, ever-evolving cosmic verb. Okay? You can't be labeled. You're too big and you're evolving too fast. When you label yourself, like we sometimes are tempted to do with human design, you actually start to identify with that label. It becomes part of your story, and it potentially locks you into a fixed identity that doesn't allow you to grow and evolve. And if you lock yourself into a fixed identity, sometimes because of our conditioning, it's usually some variation of a victim identity, which is why sometimes in the shadow, we love human design because it justifies or it rationalizes some of those pieces that keep us playing small, right? Especially if those bigger places trigger our fear of growth, right? Or that discomfort zone that's part of growth. We say things like, I can't do X, Y, or Z because I'm a generator, or I'm a manifesting generator, or I'm a projector, or I'm a manifester, or I'm a reflector, or I'm a 3rd line profile, or a 5th line profile, or I have an open will center, right? Some of you have maybe heard some of those stories. Here's the deal. Your human design is not a what, it's a how. It's your path to follow that's going to lead you out of the matrix or decondition your narrative so that you can reactivate your creative power. The quantum field contains infinite possibilities, infinite, more than you could ever think of or dream of in your entire lifetime. And when we identify with a fixed and limited story, it's like we're going to the quantum field with a thimble and saying, hey, fill it up, please. And then we get stuck in this repetitive, limited story. That's called reacting, right? Because we react out the story in every area of our life. And it's boring. It's boring. And sometimes it's frustrating and it makes us mad and makes us bitter and it makes us disappointed, right? Your creative power lies in your ability to become a fully activated cosmic storyteller. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. I'm going to teach you how to become the creator of your life today. And the spoiler alert is that it's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's actually fun. And if we were doing this in a live room, it would involve a lot of glitter. Okay. So we're going to have fun today. But before we start storytelling, I'm going to let you know about an opportunity that I'm sharing with you today. I'm going to do that first. This is an opportunity for any of you who feel called to follow this opportunity, who want to go deeper with me, and who want to train. Here we are, day 2 of the generative medicine. For those of you who don't know me and who are now wondering if I'm actually capable of doing this, my name is Dr. Karen Parker. I am the founder and creator of Quantum Human Design and the Quantum Alignment System. I'm a multiple best-selling book. I have written multiple best-selling books, and I am the world's top-selling human design author. I have a PhD in integrative medicine. I have been an emotional freedom techniques practitioner since 2000 and a life coach since 1998. I did study with and worked for the founder of traditional human design, Ra Uru Hu. I have been teaching human design since 1999, which is utterly mind-blowing. I am a Quantum University guest lecturer, a TEDx presenter. I'm the host of the Quantum Revolution podcast. I'm an Omega Institute Shift Network and Humanities Team faculty member. And if you look at the right of this slide, you'll see some of my books that I have written, including my new book that's coming out next week, Quantum Wellness. So I want you to just take a moment, and I'm going to read you a story, and I want you just to literally feel this story. Okay. So I'm going to start the story. We'll start with Once Upon a Time, but really it doesn't start with Once Upon a Time. It starts with this morning. This morning, like so many mornings before, she woke with a prayer on her lips and gratitude in her bones. The air was warm and thick with the scent of ripening figs and hearth smoke. Her joints ached, but her heart felt full. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, kissed her fingers, and pressed them gently to the small wooden carving by her doorway. Ashira, the tree of life, the one who shelters, nourishes, and protects. She had whispered Ashira's name through the dark and holy hours of childbirth. She had offered thanks with every breath of her children's first cries. She had poured out her prayers in the dirt and the moonlight, in the silence of nursing, and in the moments of aching exhaustion that only mothers understand. She had given her entire life in devotion to her family, her community, her land, and to her goddess. Her hair had gone silver in service. Her body, a vessel of creation and care, had lived as a sacred offering. Now, as her moon cycles began to fade and she crossed into a new season of wisdom, she felt more grateful than ever. She knew herself to be carried, protected, and seen by Ashira. Her soul was full of praise. She gathered her offerings, fresh oil, warm bread, woven herbs from her garden, and walked, as she had so many times before, to the sacred grove where the women of her village had always worshipped. The grove had always been a place of reverence, where cedar poles stood tall in honor of Ashira, wrapped in ribbons carved with symbols of fertility, wisdom, and grace. But when she arrived, everything had changed. The poles were gone. The sacred grove had been stripped bare. The earth where they once stood was flattened, erased. And in their place stood the men of her own village, elders and leaders she had known all her life. One of them stepped forward and told her that she was no longer permitted to worship the goddess Ashira. Her name was to be forgotten. Her image was to be destroyed. The worship of the goddess was now forbidden. Take a moment and imagine what that would feel like. Imagine waking one morning and discovering that the God you have prayed to your entire life, your source of comfort, strength, and guidance, has been outlawed. Imagine being told that your prayers are invalid, your devotion is dangerous, and the spiritual practices that have sustained your soul are now considered criminal. Imagine that you are required by law to worship a God who does not reflect your life or your body, a God who has never carried a child, a God who has never bled, a God who has never nursed through the night or wept through the ache of a miscarriage, a God who has never felt the exhaustion of tending a household or the quiet power of gathering women in ritual and reverence. Now imagine that the sacred functions of your female body, your womb, your blood, your milk, are suddenly labeled unclean, shameful, something to hide, something to silence. This is not a metaphor. This is actually history, and its echoes are still held within us, within ourselves. This is actually a true story, variation on a theme of what happened to the female consort of God in the Judaic, from the Judaic faith, when the Jews were still living in Canaan. I'm reading you this story, and how many of you felt it? Okay. How many of you felt like it felt familiar somehow, even though maybe that's not your lineage? The stories we tell, the metaphors of our lives are rooted in many, many stories. And some of those stories are ancestral stories, polarized stories, us versus them, good versus bad, black versus white, victim, victor, winner, loser, right? Those metaphors are duplicated in our personal narrative. And we hold those stories in ourselves. Even if they've never happened to us personally, they live within us, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of religion. That story, we went back and looked at history. That story of, hey, you can't worship this God anymore. It's illegal. You're going to get killed if you do. How many times have we done that story on this planet? Like, it is boring. We need to stop that story. We've reacted it plenty of times now, right? How many times have we lived out those stories of disempowerment, of being told what you can and cannot believe? Your human design chart holds the path, the key to help you break into your personal story, not only to help you untangle yourself from what I like to call the collective story vault, which is actually part of our human purpose right now. For the last 400 years, if we look at human design and the story of human design in the last 400 years, part of what we're doing is we're untangling ourselves from collective narratives. We're putting new stories in the collective story vault. Every time we live our life to its fullest and we fulfill the story that only each and every one of you can fulfill, every time we do that, when we leave, our story goes into this collective story vault, and the story of what's possible for all of humanity changes. So does the story for you and your life and your family and your community. So many times we say, I don't know what to do. I am looking at the world and I don't know what to do. I don't know what I should do. The answer to that question will show up when the story you hold is a story of empowerment. And even if it's not your job to do fixing the whole world, because that's a big job and it's not one person's job, even holding the control over your own narrative and changing your own story restores to you your power and allows you to create a field of information energetically, vibrationally, that then allows you to also create a space for others to do the same. Your family, your children, your beloved, your community. And eventually, as enough of us gain that skill back, our natural creative power, if enough of us do this, we create a critical mass of people on this planet who say, time out, no more. We're each and every one of us a unique and vital and irreplaceable part of the cosmic plan. I'm valuable, so are you and 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 you. And I need to make decisions that reflect the preciousness of every living being on this planet. That's why your story matters. That's why taking back control over your story matters so very much. So our stories are held, some of our stories are held in the collective story vault. And of course, every time we shift our story, we change what's possible in the human story. So I'm going to share with you the opportunity that I was telling you that I was going to share. And I want to introduce you to the Quantum Alignment System Training Program. This is more than just a human design training program. It is a complete transformation system that is integrated. So in this program, not only are you going to learn how to interpret type, strategy, authority, and profiles and centers, that's basic human design. You're also going to learn to go beyond the chart and integrate emotional, mental, and energetic recalibration. You're going to learn how to use the emotional freedom techniques, flower remedies, proprietary techniques that allow you to tap directly into the quantum field and support yourself and your clients in creating fully integrative narratives so that you can create fully integrated healing. So we work across in this program. I'm going to teach you how to work across all layers of the energy field to create not just temporary changes in people, but permanent changes in people and how they perceive themselves and how they experience the world. So this is a program that is for you, for your own self, for your own transformation. And part of why it is for you is because if you are going to serve as a healer, we have to first take care of ourselves. We can only lead people as far as we ourselves have gone energetically, vibrationally, especially when it comes to healing. And so we work a lot on our own personal healing journey as part of the training. This is not only, though, for you, it's a system that will teach you how to take what you've learned, the transformation you've experienced, and bring it to others. So I like to say, when you train with this system and you learn quantum human design, EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, energy alignment using sound frequencies and flower remedies, and you use this program, you're going to not only learn how to break free from your own conditioning, but from help others break free from their conditioning. You're also going to be part of a powerful movement. We have built into this program, and I will say I'm extremely privileged to say we've built in this program a movement and a community. You are going to be joining a community of healers who are consciously and intentionally taking those bold and powerful steps necessary to transform those stories that we just talked about. So the program, here's kind of what the program looks like. You get a comprehensive pre-recorded content. So there's a series of self-study videos that teach you all about the quantum alignment system, the methodology, EFT protocols, how to do energy work. You also get in the mail a printed quantum alignment system manual that's going to give you step-by-step guidance that you can take with you and use when you're actively working with clients. You get live practice sessions and coaching support for integration and hands-on learning. You get an official certificate with recognition and a listing on our Quantum Alignment System website. And actually, Team Quantum, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link to the practitioners in the chat, that would be good so you can see some of our Quantum Alignment System practitioners. And we have a couple of them on the call here today. This training does include Quantum Human Design levels 1 and 2. And as I said, the best part is you get to be part of this amazing community. This is going to give you in this training everything you need to start not only learning how to do the quantum alignment system, but actually how to start promoting it with your offerings. It's a curriculum that we have now been teaching for almost 10 years. So in addition, though, to the curriculum, you also get to learn an advanced protocol called the Story Lab. So you're not only going to learn quantum human design level 1, quantum human design level 2, you also will learn the quantum alignment system. And then in addition to that, you will become certified as an advanced Story Lab facilitator. So you're actually going to get 4 certifications out of this program. So quantum human design level 1, level 2, quantum alignment system, and advanced Story Lab facilitator. When you learn to do Story Lab, you're going to be given videos that you can straight up use with your clients directly. You'll learn how to use this as either a retreat program, one-off even introductory evenings. You'll learn how to use Story Lab as an entire standalone product itself. So you have several different ways to take all of this training and turn it into a business that you can use to do amazing and powerful work in the world and support yourself in a sustainable way. Literally, when we say immediate monetization, we literally have had students who completed the training and went on to do a Story Lab retreat workshop the next weekend and started that process of getting their investment in the program back. This is a program that is designed for your lifestyle and your time commitment. I do offer a lot of flexible learning structures that fit your schedule. Look, I was a full-time single mom for a lot of years. I know that you need to have that flexibility. And sometimes you're doing it outside of your work, your job, and other things going on in your life. It takes about 5 to 7 hours per week. That includes content, practice, integration, and the classes. So the pre-recorded materials are self-paced. We also have live practice sessions, Q&A sessions, community engagement. Plus, we have a monthly call called case consultations, where even beyond the training, you get plugged into our community, and we are always learning new information and learning new materials. So once a month, we have really fun, I think, informational gatherings where we talk about healing and we look at case studies, and we also continue growing in your education. So this program is regularly $6,297. For for all of you listening, I'm giving you 33% off. So if you enroll by August the 21st, you will lock in a 33% savings. That means your tuition goes down to $4,219. We do have very generous payment options. We'll put the link for you in the chat, so you can click on the link, use the coupon code. We'll make sure we put the coupon code in the chat for you. The first 15 people, and I don't know, we sold quite a few yesterday, so I don't know how many of these we have left, but the first 15 people who pay in full will join me for an exclusive 2-hour Story Lab group coaching session that's going to be designed to help you shift that internal story that's holding you back. In particular, we're going to really look at the relationship between your self-worth, your value as a healer, and disrupting societal conditioning or old stories about charging for healing work. So no prep required, just show up, participate, walk away with greater clarity and alignment and momentum so that you can be ready when the training begins. And of course, this is your chance to start transforming from the inside out right now. So let's take a pause. Okay, so my research. So in my research, in the early 2000s, I was fascinated with a study that I read that said having a memory that stirs up the emotion of anger, so remembering and telling a story about something that made you feel angry, actually causes your IgA levels to drop. Now, IgA, immunoglobulin A, is a vital part of your immune system. And when we have low IgA levels, it makes us vulnerable to chronic diseases and other kinds of ailments. So I wanted to take that study that Harvard did about the impact of telling a story that created anger in you and look at what would we do, what would happen if we took that to the next level? What would happen if we had people tell the story that felt disempowering and that caused IgA levels to drop? What happened if we would rewrite that memory in such a way that it was more empowering? Would that cause IgA levels to go up? So my hypothesis basically was memories that feel disempowering can cause IgA levels to drop. Rewriting the memory can cause IgA levels to go up. So if your IgA levels are low, particularly when we have chronic low IgA levels, which is what can happen if we have a chronic low quality story. So if we have a chronic story, or we're telling chronic stories about events that left us feeling disempowered, events that left us feeling angry, events where we felt like we had no control over what was happening, that can cause our immune system to suffer. And basically what will happen is if we're stuck in a chronic low frequency storytelling rut, as we can tend to be sometimes, and the IgA levels go down, we are vulnerable to frequent infections like sinus infections, lung infections, digestive infections. We are more prone to allergies. We can experience digestive and autoimmune problems like celiac disease and lupus, and any of those strange, undiagnosable autoimmune issues that we have anytime we get burned out. And that is actually when I work with clients, particularly in the beginning of my business, my career working with human design, I'd say the first 10 years of my career, most of my clients were projectors. I had very few other types. And the biggest issue for my projector clients was burnout. And one of the things that would happen is I had so many clients that were burned out that would have strange autoimmune disorders, and no one knew what the diagnosis was. And I suspect now, in hindsight, many years later, that probably what we were seeing was chronic low IgA, probably because we were looking at stories from a type that in the shadow had a tendency to feel pretty disempowered by life. So that is my theory. I have no evidence on that, but that's just my suspicion. So in my experiment, I took 50 subjects. I measured their baseline saliva IgA levels. And so we had measurement of their baseline levels. I had them then tell me a story about an event or a memory that made them feel devalued or disempowered. And then after they told me that story, I reassessed the IgA levels and found significant decrease in the IgA response. So basically, when I had them tell the story where they were in some way a victim, when they shared that story with me, it caused their immune response to go down. Now, normally that doesn't stay down. So if you've told a crummy story, don't panic, because we all do it and we have crummy days. This is really more about the long term. Being stuck in a story is when we get chronic issues. But if you're just telling a story with your girlfriends, or you're out with your friends and you are having coffee and you're really mad about something that happened and you tell that story, you're not going to manifest full-blown immune dysfunction. Okay. But it was very important to note that when people shared this story, their immune response went down. Usually it goes back up about 4 hours later. In my experiment, I had them write a new story in such a way. So I had them take the story that they just told me. I had them rewrite that story in such a way that they either learned something important that helped them heal their self-worth, or they emerged from the story as the victor, not the victim. Now, when I had them rewrite that story, they could rewrite that story realistically. They could rewrite that story with fantasy. They could gain superpowers. It didn't matter how they rewrote it, as long as at the end of the story, they had either walked away with an important lesson that helped them heal their self-worth that they took with them later on in life, or they rewrote the story from such a way that they shifted their lens on the story and they emerged from the story not the victim anymore, but the victor of the story. So they could be as fantastical and creative as they wanted. And some people were not fantastical and creative. Some people were very, very literal. We're all very different in how we're hardwired, and we're all very different in how we play with our creativity, and none of it's wrong. None of it's wrong. So after they rewrote this story, I had them read the story to me. And what I found is when I measured IgA levels immediately after they read the story, the new story, that their IgA levels had either a significant rise or even a return to baseline. So we could speed up that baseline, that return to baseline experience, if we took back control over the story. So I used some of these contemplations. I'm going to give you, because you're going to go through this experience yourself in just a little bit. I used some of these questions in giving them some things to think about when they talked about rewriting the story. I'm going to give you some other prompts in addition to that, because I did not use human design in my research, but I did pluck elements from the chart into my process. So the questions that I really had them play with was, how had this experience made you who you are today? So if we're stuck in a victim story and we're telling an old story from the past, if we rethink that story and think about, oh, how did this experience make me who I am today? What did I learn? That's you taking back control over the narrative. The second question I had them explore is, how has this helped you remember the truth about yourself? And usually the truth about yourself is not what you're telling yourself in the story, but something much more magnificent. You're not really broken, right? You're not really problematic. You're actually incredibly powerful and whole and capable. And when we when we rethink that experience and rethink that story, it helps us remember the truth about ourselves. And then I had them explore what was the bigger purpose, meaning, or lesson for you in this experience, so that they could walk away with a deep acknowledgement of the lesson and the purpose of the story. So that was my research. As I said, I did not use human design in my research. I tried to talk my advisor into it, but he wouldn't do it. But of course I walked away continuing to really think about and be in the world of human design. And when I really sat and thought a lot about how is the chart a pathway to helping us reclaim our story beyond just looking at those questions, what I really noticed was that the chart itself contains a narrative path. The chart's just a storytelling tool. It's not a what. You're not a what, you're a how, right? And it's a path that shows us basically our soul curriculum, what we're here to learn, what we're here to grapple with as part of our learning, and what journey we need to go on to reclaim our authentic self. So when I crafted this sort of contemplation about the narrative path and how to break the chart down into a storytelling tool, I came up with this graph, and we're going to work a little bit with this today. The first part of the graph, or the foundation of this pyramid, is the resiliency keys. So yesterday we talked about if we synthesize the chart and distill it down to the 9 base archetypes that are essential for resiliency, those resiliency keys, lovability, self-worth, empowerment, all those things we talked about briefly yesterday and you did a little worksheet on. That's your goal of your story, right? You are going to be telling a story whenever you're telling a story. You're telling a story about you are the main character. And really, when we start to think about the story through the lens of the hero's journey, how do we grow? How do we evolve? How do we take our story to the next level? The goal is always, how do we get to that resilient place? How do we discover our self-love? In fact, Ra used to even say that the purpose of human design is to help you fall wildly and madly in love with yourself, right? How do we get there? Well, we get there first and foremost by reclaiming the story of our main character. Your type, your human design type, is the main character in your personal story. And when we decondition your main character, meaning when we start looking at how do we evolve that main character that is us into the actualized full potential of who we are, then naturally we start to move into living resiliently. Your authority, by the way, I'm going to share something with you all in just a second. Your authority, which is what goes with the strategy, the decision-making part of your type, your authority is what your healing path is. It helps you get back into your body. Because when we think about human design is really, especially in the beginning phases of understanding your human design, is really first and foremost a tool to help you get back into your body. Your human design teaches you how to feel in your body, regardless of your type, how to feel what does a good decision feel like in my body? What does a bad decision feel like in my body? Because over time, as we become conditioned, as we are entrained into believing that there's a formula for success, there are rules we have to follow, there are societal and familial expectations that we need to meet if we're going to be loved and valued for in the world, that when we follow those rules, those formulas for success, a lot of times they don't feel right. If you think about it, if you can remember, especially back when we're smaller kids, right? Kids are pretty clear about what feels right and what doesn't. And over time, as we internalize the story of what it takes to be successful, what it is that our family expects from us, what it is that our conditioning is, what it is that society or our employers or school or whatever expects from us, one of the things we have to do to survive the conditioning process is we have to numb out the body, right? We have to numb it out. And that's why sometimes illness and pain can be such an important catalyst for healing, not just physically, but even, on a metaphorical level, because when we start reconnecting with the body and we hear the body's screams, and oftentimes disease and pain in the body is our body screaming like, hey, I can't do it anymore, right? Part of what happens is we're getting back in touch with the body. And so our journey in our personal narrative, when we are walking into our human design story, is we are reclaiming our main character. And then we are following our authority to help us remember, what does it feel like in my body when it feels right? And what does it feel like in my body when it doesn't feel right? Because that is your compass. That's part of the compass that guides you back to your right place, right space, right path, right work, right everything in your life. The profile on your chart is the characteristics or the qualities of the personality of your main character. So your main character and their characteristics is your profile. That profile is going to tell you your learning style. It's going to give you some key insights into purpose. It's going to tell you what you need to feel grounded. It's going to tell you how you experience the world. And so your main character has sort of a personality and characteristics in that personality. Those are represented by your profile. In the human design story, just like there is in every story, there's a climax. There's a personal place or a powerful place where the main character has to basically come up, usually against themselves. Usually when we start really diving into victim victor, we start to see that, oh, I'm the victim and the victor, right? And then part of what has to happen is I have to figure out within myself my own sacred flaws. So the term sacred flaw, I hesitate to use the word flaw because I know it's a word that's highly charged, but if you ever take any narrative writing programs or you study novel writing or storytelling, oftentimes in storytelling classes, we talk about the main character has a sacred flaw. It's that place where the main character has to come up against themselves, come up against their own limitations, come up against their own narrative and figure out where they're misinterpreting their own story and where they have to mature their own inner self in order to become or emerge as the hero in the story. So your sacred flaw, your learning path, and not your learning path, but your challenges, those maturing points in your chart are held within the centers where we learn about either self-regulation or self-acceptance, as we talked about yesterday, and in the gates, which are subtle nuances that influence a big part of what you need to work with, learn from your soul curriculum in order to emerge in your story as the hero. Any questions so far?
Yeah, some people ask me about strategy, Karen, like where that falls into place here.
Strategy falls with type, and strategy and authority are really the healing path. So your strategy blended with your authority are going to be what you need to do to get back into your body. And I'm going to show you. So here's something to think about. When I first learned human design and I studied with Ra always said, human design, as it is being taught currently, is really a prescription for healing. That when we are following strategy and authority, living true to our type, what it really does is it brings it back to ourselves. It brings us back to baseline. Ra always said that someday he would teach an expanded version of human design for what happens after we get back in our body. What happens when we recover and heal the baseline. And when he passed in 2011, he hadn't really completed that work yet. He never really got to talk about, okay, what's after the baseline? And so part of why I created quantum human design was I really felt the need for that expanded quantum expression of the types. So I just felt like it was such an important piece. I have been very fortunate my whole life, in my whole professional life, to attract, I think, fairly evolved human beings who oftentimes have done a lot of work. And a lot of people, especially when I first started teaching human design, a lot of my students or my clients would say, I understand human design. I see that there's something valid about it, but I don't really relate to it that much because I don't feel like I'm in the conditioned expression anymore. I feel like I'm already there at the baseline. What's next? And so I took all the vocabulary for traditional human design. We went into a sound lab and I experimented and played with language for almost 2 years until I found and rewrote traditional human design and the traditional human design language into high frequency language because words have frequencies. And I used that high frequency language to construct a version of human design that allowed people to grow beyond their baseline expression. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to do a brief overview of the phases of the types. So we're going to briefly talk about the 5 types. You're going to learn about your type. If you are brand spanking new to human design, do we have anybody who's brand new to human design? What I'm going to do for you, I'll just post this in the link. If you are brand new to human design, you're like, what is she talking about? I have no idea. Why am I here? I'm still really glad you're here. We're going to put a link in the chat to a program called Introduction to Quantum Human Design. That program is normally a $97 program. I'm going to make sure you get a discount for it. So it's a $27 program. This is a great, really powerful way for you to quickly learn about human design. And I want you just to listen today and play along, because you're still going to learn a lot about yourself. Do you know your type, Melinda? Do you know your type? Okay, if you are like that new, I love it. Before we do this exercise today, I want you to go to freehumandesignchart.com and get your chart so that you can see your type. That'll help you. Let's go back and review really quickly. In traditional human design, you have a type. That type is the main character in your story. You are today going to explore your main character. And I'm going to give you, you're going to basically get homework today. All right. So in the conditioned expression of type, we see symptoms, common symptoms. So I'm going to show you about a slide for each of the 5 types. And in that slide, you're going to see conditioned expression. And underneath that conditioned expression, you're going to see some common things that happen when you're not living true to yourself. And you might relate to some of those. So if you are a manifester, like Marcia is, then as a manifester, you might relate, Marcia might relate to some of these conditioned expressions. So some of the things that we see sometimes with the manifester is that the manifester shows up brand new to human design, and they're burned out. They are oftentimes struggling with the emotional theme for their type, which is anger. And it's not that the manifester is angry, it's that the manifester has an internal nonverbal creative flow. It's hard sometimes to put into words what it is that you're doing. And you're in this flow following this creative force, right? And when you follow this creative force, you don't always have the words for it. And if people interrupt you, sometimes you lose connection to that flow. And when you lose connection to that flow, it feels like an explosion. And it's really not anger. We call it anger. We don't think we have a good word for it in English anyway. It's really creative disruption. And that energy, all that creative energy has to go somewhere. And sometimes it's this disruption and you can't get that back. The shadow theme of the manifester, who is a type that's here to feel super powerful, is that oftentimes they feel disempowered. And because connecting into the body can sometimes be such a challenge for the manifester, sometimes they struggle with trusting themselves, because really feeling the inner timing of a manifester can be challenging. And when they miss that inner timing, or they don't know how to dial into it, they can feel really lost. If you are a manifesting generator, you might also feel this way too, because you are a hybrid type. And as a hybrid type, you have some of this in you as well. The manifester strategy is not very natural. When you are a manifester, your job is to take stock of who's going to be impacted by my creative flow. Who do I need to inform, which is your strategy? Who do I need to inform? Because when I inform people, then they are able to move out of the way and not disrupt my creative flow, right? And they don't interrupt me and ask me things like, what are you doing? Do you need some help? Can I do something for you? Which causes you to lose your flow. You inform. Hopefully you've curated a group of people in your life who know, oh, okay, that's just my manifestor love doing their thing. I need to move out of the way, so that you can follow the right inner timing for your creative flow. You can learn to trust yourself and fulfill your unique and powerful role of tapping into the quantum field and bringing inspiration out into the world. That's the baseline. When you live that way over time, when you practice feeling your inner sense of timing, informing people about what you're about to do, and you learn to not ask for permission and not avoid your inner creative fire, and you be with it and you live it and you curate it and you cultivate it, when you live at that baseline expression, you go through a metamorphosis, which is why I wanted to give quantum human design new names and new words, because that metamorphosis is really distinctly different than the baseline. So as a manifester, you go through this evolution. And as you go through this evolution, you evolve into what we call the initiator in quantum human design, which means when you live true to yourself and you follow your internal nonverbal creative flow and you connect into that deep inner sense of timing and creativity, you're being radically authentic, you being deeply aligned with that authentic self that is you. creates a field of energy around you that creates space for other people to show up as their authentic self. So you don't initiate them into things that they're going to do. People aren't standing around waiting for you to do something so that they know what to do, which is how sometimes it's taught in traditional human design. But rather, your very existence inspires people to become more authentic. You become an initiating force of authenticity. The next type is the generator type. So again, in our conditioned expression, if you are a generator, you might commonly feel frustrated. That's the emotional theme for the generator. What happens for the generator is the generator has a stair-step learning curve. You're here ultimately to become good at things through practice and repetition. That's your job as a generator. But because you have a stair-step learning curve, you have a tendency when you start something new to have an initial surge in growth and mastery, and then you sit on a plateau. And that means no matter what you do, no matter how much you practice, no matter how hard you work, you feel kind of stuck. And feeling stuck is a common thing for generator types. And when you feel stuck, it can feel like nothing's happening. And what happens a lot of times is generators quit. And so it's very common in the conditioned expression for generators to have cycles of starting, quitting, starting, quitting, starting, quitting, starting, quitting, and feeling super, super unfulfilled and frustrated and dissatisfied because you never quite get that feeling of tapping into your potential. And so one of the things you have to learn as a generator is, how do I start to read when I'm stuck and decide, am I actually stuck or am I actually building up momentum for the breakthrough? Because that plateau can sometimes be about feeling frustrated and recognizing that that frustration is actually a buildup of energy that's going to lead you to the next breakthrough, that next surge in mastery. Now, generators can burn out too, by the way. Generators burn out oftentimes by settling for mediocre, by making peace with, I guess I'll just never do what I came here to do. I'll always be like, an okay life, but not fabulous. I want you to get to fabulous because you deserve it. Generators have a motor inside of their chart. If you have a red motor on your chart, it's called the sacral. It's not the bottom square, it's the one in the middle. If you have a defined sacral and you are a generator, a manifesting generator, you are here to tune into your gut. That's part of your decision-making process that gets you back in your body. When you tune into that gut gives you answers about what you should do next. Do I stay or do I quit? Do I maintain and sustain the course or do I quit? Right? That sacral response responds in sounds. It says two sounds, uh-huh and uh-uh. And one of the things that generator types have to learn to do is to start responding to life through those sounds instead of words. It gets you out of your head because your head's like, oh, but we could do this, we could do that, we could do, what about this, right? Your gut is like, no, here's what you need to do, or no, this doesn't feel right, or yes, this feels so good, even though your brain's screaming, no, don't do it, right? When you start to live at that baseline expression, when you consistently trust your sacral response, and you trust that the universe is conspiring on your behalf and coming at you with good things, and you know how to navigate the good things and how to avoid the bad things, then you become satisfied. You start to experience the fulfillment of your learning curve. You activate a full force of life force energy that you probably haven't experienced in a long, long time, and life feels good and yummy again. And when you live at that place for a while, then you go through a metamorphosis. And that metamorphosis says you become the alchemist. You get a new name, right? You metamorphosize from the generator to the alchemist. And as an alchemist, you have the ability to self-actualize. You actually have the ability to take that, what felt like untapped potential inside of you, and actually fulfill it. And then through that fulfillment of that potential, you become the person, a part of the force in the world that literally does the work of building the future. Okay, you're here to lay the foundation through work and through meaningful engagement in the world with building the future. Our next type are manifesting generators. You are a hybrid type. You are part manifestor, part manifesting generator. In your conditioned expression, you can feel frustrated. You can have cycles of quitting, except you're going to do all of it 10 times faster than a generator. You can feel unfulfilled. You can be burned out in the same way as a generator. That's you settle for less than, and you go home and you just watch Netflix or YouTube or whatever, because you got to tune out the fact that you are constantly experiencing low grade settling / frustration. You can be burned out just like a generator in that same way, or like a manifester. You can have anger as an emotional theme, just like a manifester. What happens for the manifesting generator is when you go into that stair step learning curve, you're designed to skip over some of those steps because your job is to find the fastest, most effective way to do things. And for you to do that, it means when it's time for you to go to the next level or respond to something or trust that sacral response, you tend to get your answer for what needs to happen next in an internal nonverbal creative flow, just like a manifester. So when you get ready to go do the next thing drops in. You get downloads. My bestie is a manifesting generator, and she's always telling me, I got a download. I'm like, when she gets a download, I'm like, back away, because it's going to go fast. Right. And so manifesting generators are here to respond with those sounds like the generator, to go through those learning curves, just like a generator, even though they're leaping. By the way, sometimes they have to go back and fix the steps they skipped. And manifesting generators get to do this in multiple places at once simultaneously. They're oftentimes multitaskers because you're here to find the fastest, most effective way to do things. When you can learn to trust your sacral, give yourself permission to do more than one thing at a time if that feels right to you. When you learn how to harness that nonverbal creative flow and inform people that, hey, I'm about to do this, right? Then you live at that state, and then you evolve into your quantum type, which is the time bender, where you are living a fast, effective, creative flow, where you're fulfilling that flow. And just like with the generator, doing the work that builds the future. Projectors. By the way, if you are a projector, please, please, please go listen to Taylor Swift's podcast interview this week. Oh my God. Such a self-actualized projector. So good. So good. I was laughing the whole time. Like, wow. I don't think she knows her human design, but man, she's like the ultimate orchestrator. And if you have bought into the story that is sometimes perpetuated in human design that projectors can't do anything, can we look at Taylor Swift, please, for a minute? Like, global domination. I'm not really a Swiftie, but wow, what a human, right? So in the conditioned expression of the projector, you can experience burnout, and oftentimes that burnout is cataclysmic. It's very common for the projector burnout to be pretty cataclysmic. The emotional theme for the projector is bitterness. And that bitterness happens because, and it's really beautiful, that bitterness happens because you're pushing people away for a reason. You don't like it, it's not fun, but you're actually unconsciously pushing people away for a reason. Because when you're bitter as a projector, it means A, you don't have the energy, and B, you need to probably go heal your self-worth because you're settling for less than what you deserve and taking invitations that are not worthy of you. The shadow theme of the projector is not knowing when enough is enough. And oftentimes, hand in hand with that is shame and low self-worth, because you're not designed to work in the way that we teach people you should be working, right? And when you are following your true energy, you're not here to push. You're not here to grind. You're not here to work like the generator types. You're here to manage them. You're here to see the potential and guide them towards the fulfillment of that potential. And that means if you're living in a societal story that says, if you want to make money, we talked about this yesterday, then you have to work. And if you want to make more money, then you have to work harder. You can't do that if you're a projector, especially if you're burned out. You can do that for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to burn yourself out. And so part of the healing is about healing your self-worth, healing your energy, and then positioning yourself to wait for the right invitations and recognition. And those right invitations and recognition are not for the little things in life, please. I'm so over this human design story of projectors have to wait for everything. You don't have to wait to get gas in your car. You don't have to wait to go get dinner. You don't have to wait to go to a movie. You don't have to wait for the little things. It's about waiting for the big things in life. And what you're waiting for is the recognition and invitation from the people who see your value. And then you're giving them the guidance they're asking for. And if they don't see your value, hello, don't give them the time of day, because that's a waste of your energy and your time. The more you heal your self-worth and stand in your value and trust that you are here to guide people who know and see your value, who trust in your expertise and your brilliance, the more you can do that, the more you fulfill your purpose of being the people who lead us into the new world. Thank you very much. Okay. So when you can stay in that space, you get your energy back, you get your recognition back, you get your self-worth back. And when you live in that space ultimately and you evolve into the orchestrator. The orchestrator is here to hold the energy grid for the planet in place. You are here to hold the whole grid in place. You are steering the future. You're getting all those generators and manifesting generators who are out there bopping around going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. You're guiding them. I'm raising a projector currently. She's 16. She's raising me, actually, is kind of the way it's working out. And she's teaching me so much because she sees what's going on and she helps me guide my energy. You are here, if you are a projector type living as an orchestrator, to redefine our collective definitions of value and what is truly valuable in life. You are here to shift the definition of values in the world and guide us towards the fulfillment of the future. Last but definitely not least, our reflector. In the conditioned expression, our reflector can feel burned out, disappointed. Again, not knowing when enough is enough. Shame because you're not like everybody else. Can be codependent and feel a lot of pressure to move faster than feels comfortable for you. The reflector is here to reflect back to us the health of our community. When you have a reflector chart, you are taking in all this energy and you're reflecting it back out. You are the barometer of the health of your community. But because you experience so much openness, it's very easy for you to get enmeshed in others. It's very easy for you to get confused about your own energy. And so part of your job is to physically place yourself in the right place geographically that feels good to you until you can cultivate for yourself an inner sense of home. So part of what you have to do to move into the baseline expression is you have to learn how to set healthy boundaries. You have to give yourself permission to take time to make good decisions. Reflectors need a full 28 days or more, a full moon cycle to make big decisions. Again, you can't do that with the little decisions. You're not going to wait 28 days to decide, do you want the Oreos with the green icing or the white icing? You can just get what you want, right? But for the big decisions in life, you need time and you need to give yourself time. You have to stop falling in love with people's potentials, right? And learn how to surround yourself, carefully curate your environment so you're surrounding yourself with healthy people. And that means sometimes you have to set good boundaries and get rid of people who are not actually fulfilling the potential that you've fallen in love with. When you live in this space, because the reflector knows people so deeply, they really truly understand the full potential of the human story. When they understand that, then they are able to walk into a room and without doing anything, hold the energy of what's possible. So it is the reflector's role to set the standard, to bring the potential into the room, to bring awareness into the room, and to embody the full potential of the human story. So they calibrate, which is the quantum human design name, they calibrate the energy in the room by fully embodying the potential. All right, now it's your turn. So I started off talking about stories and storytelling. I talked about the empower of telling a story in a way that empowers you, in a way that takes you out of the victim role and allows you to be the victor, in a way that you look at the narrative and you take yourself through a hero or a heroine's journey and learn something vital that becomes a catalyst for the rest of your life. I'm going to invite you to take control over your story. And I'm going to give you an assignment to begin the process of working on your own story. And we're going to start it here today, but I'm going to encourage you to really give yourself the gift of taking the time and continuing with this process. And I want to share something with you. What I have learned since I did my research study is it's not the story that's important. The story is cool and it's fun and you need to go through that process and you can anchor your story. I always tell people, write the story, write your story, take back control over your story, and then do something ritualistic to anchor yourself in that story. When you feel complete with writing it, do some kind of a ritual to really integrate that story. But the energy, the medicine isn't in the story. It's not the story. It's the process of taking back control over the story that's the medicine. The creative process itself of writing the story is almost a mesmerized hypnotic state that takes you out of the left side of the brain, which is where most of us tend to try to do our transformation. Even when we go to therapy, oftentimes when we're in therapy, we're left siding our story, right? And when we go into the left side of the brain, part of what happens is we trigger doubt, we trigger suspicion, we trigger patterns, because the left side of the brain is all about patterns. When you take an hour or two and sit in a creative space and you work on writing a story, you don't even have to take an hour. That might sound like really long for some of you. You can do it in 10-minute bursts. But that experience of hanging out over here in this creative place where you've liberated yourself from logic, which means you're no longer trapped by patterns and things that you think are probable and possible. You are over here in the impossible possible realm, right? You're over here in the realm of miracles, which is really what a miracle is. A miracle is anything that defies a pattern, right? So you're over here in this creative part of your brain that's sensual, it's emotional, it involves glitter sometimes. It likes to play with superheroes and superpowers and all kinds of divine cosmic helpers, right? When you play over here and you work on your story over here, we go back to that metaphor I gave you of the subconscious mind as a filing cabinet. You're still creating new files to put in that file cabinet in your subconscious mind, but now you're bypassing the doubt and suspicion. And when you put that file into the subconscious mind, your brain doesn't know the difference between you cultivating a whole sequence of superpowers and learning how to swoosh your velvet cape through life as the queen or the goddess or the king of your world. Your brain doesn't know the difference between that persona or the person over here that you're trying to reason and logic yourself through. And for any of you who have gone through this story lab process, you can share how transformative that really is, right? Because you get out of that space where you're limiting yourself to think, oh, but only this is possible. And you move yourself over here to, well, anything is possible in the storytelling realm, right? And when we go to that storytelling realm, we take ourselves not only out of the realm of possibility, we take ourselves out of the realm of time. It's why we start stories with once upon a time, right? Once upon a time. It's not in time, it's a once upon a time. And you can go over here and you can heal in all directions of time with the power of a story. So here's what I want you to do. You are going to get a handout, and in that handout, you're going to see a before and after story for each of the 5 types. So team is going to post a before and after document with before and after. So open that up when you're ready, find your type and read the before and after. Now, I do not want you to duplicate that story in its exact form. I only am giving you this as an example of what might your story look like now and where might it go. Your story can be very different than the examples in this prompt, but I want you just to look at it, just to get an idea of like, here's my beginning, here might be my potential end. And then what I want you to do is to think about, I'm going to give you some questions to think about, and we're going to give you a handout for that too. So you're going to get a handout, and the title of that handout is How Did I Become Conditioned? I want you to write your own story, to write your own story about your type, your main character in your story. So what I want you to do is when you think about writing this story, I want you to think about some of the following questions. Again, you have this on this worksheet. How have the themes, this is what we talked about yesterday when we talked about conditioning. How have the themes of my open centers disrupted my own connection to my inner wisdom? So if you go back yesterday and we talk about the open centers, or if you look at the worksheet that I handed out to you yesterday, I told my team we don't need the worksheet today, but maybe we do. So how did your open centers disrupt your own connection to your inner wisdom? Number 2, I want you to think about what beliefs and expectations was I imprinted with? What family patterns does my family express? That might be part of what needs to be liberated and transformed in your story. I want you to think about what old stories live in my ancestral lineage that my main character needs to heal. Some of you know what those stories are. If you know, and they may be stories of poverty, they may be stories of victimhood, they may be stories of immigration. Who knows what they are, right? You have your own ancestral lineage stories. What ancestral stories does your main character need to heal? Because you're stepping out of the realm of time. You can heal those stories in all directions of time. What stories from the collective story vault might be impacting you? What stories do we hold collectively? These questions, Charity, are in a handout that got posted in the chat. So if you go down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the chat bubble. If you click on that chat bubble, it will take you to a series of chats, and the documents are in there and we're posting them. So you can download them directly from your computer. And by the way, when the replay comes out for this, and we will post a replay for this, the documents will also be posted on the replay page. So you can always access those pages, those documents there as well. What experiences have I had that might be impacting my story? What happened to you in your lived experience, right? That might be influencing your story right now. What does your main character need to learn? If you're stuck in the conditioned expression of your character, what do you need to learn to get yourself back to baseline? Or if you're at baseline, what do you need to learn to take yourself into that quantum expression? What adventure or challenge, I like to call this, what quest does my main character go on to heal? Okay. What quest does my main character need to go on to heal? When you are writing your story, are there any divine helpers or mystical mentors that you need to call in? Are there any divine helpers or mystical mentors you need to call in? It was amazing to me how many people, when I did my research, how almost everybody called in different mystical mentors and divine people. It's so much more fun. Life is so much more fun when you have a companion troll, right? Or a unicorn. Okay. Are there any ancestors I need to call in to help my main character on their quest? So I will tell you that I go through a storytelling process anytime I get hung up with anything, because I have learned to train myself to see metaphors in every experience that I have. And recently I was working on a story from, it is a money story. And I was going through some things I knew about my family history. And I called in my grandmother, who has been passed now for about 15 years, to come and help me with a part of the story, because I felt like there was a gap in my understanding of the story. And it was amazing. What is the result of the quest that you're going to send your main character on? What is the result of the quest? What are they going to learn? What are they going to grow? How are they going to change? How's it going to affect their money, their relationships, their spirituality, their career fulfillment, their energy, their body, their health, their wellness? And the last question, how does my main character grow? How does becoming more authentic change my character's life? So I would like for you all, I'm going to give you just a few minutes to start going through these questions on this handout. How did I become conditioned? You don't have to answer them in full depth. You don't have to answer them in paragraphs. You can if you want to. This is a hack that I use. This is a manifesting generator hack. I will actually record them into my note-taking app on my phone, because I can talk them faster than I can write them. But I want you just to think about those questions and explore them through the lens of a storytelling lens. If you were going to write a story about a main character, your type, who was experiencing the conditioned expression of your type, and you were feeling a lot of anger, maybe a lot of disappointment, maybe a lot of frustration, maybe, or a lot of bitterness, maybe. How would you take that main character? What would happen? How would that character grow if you evolved them in the story? What quest would they need to go on to recover their connection to their body, to their wisdom, to their baseline expression? And how do all these questions on the sheet maybe impact your character And how can you weave that into a story? And again, there's some story prompts in the chat as well. So I want to make sure that you all have all of the handouts. So you should have on the handout with the types in it, all 5 types are on there. So you just have to keep scrolling down on the document. Okay. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes just because, again, I want to stress for you, it's not the story that's important. And sometimes, and we're conditioned, I think, to think the story is important, right? We want to take the story to the teacher and we want to get a gold star and we want to get, this is so good, exclamation mark, smiley face, right? How many of you remember those from like those papers from elementary school? It's not the story that's important. It's the process of putting your story together, of taking back control over the narrative and writing it out, either fantastically or even linearly, in a way where you are in charge of the story. You get to decide, right? You get to decide. So I'm going to give you all 5 minutes before we go, just because I want to get you initiated into this experience so that you make that commitment to yourself to bring yourself back into that storytelling process and take some time and really walk into that story. So you may turn your camera off if you choose to. You can take a deep breath if you choose to. Whatever you need to do, just take a moment and really be with your storytelling process and then come back. And I'm going to give you one last heart activation before we go. All right. That was 5 minutes. Did it feel like it went by fast? Do you feel sort of that, just that engaged and hypnotic place where you're suddenly approaching your story from a very different perspective of curiosity and creativity? I want you to do this with your chart. I want you to look at your chart as a storytelling tool and start first by looking at the characteristics of your type, the condition, the baseline, and the quantum expression of your type. But you can apply this process to anything in your life. Again, you're struggling with the IRS, you're having a fight with your husband, you're in a, how many of you have ever been caught in a cycle of chaos? This has been my week, literally my week. Like, it started off and it's just been like whoop, rolling downhill fast. It's still a great week, and I'm so grateful because I get to be here with y'all. But I shared with you yesterday, the cat attacked a skunk. The skunk sprayed into the air vent of the house. The whole house was full of skunk. It's just a week. It's been a week, right? You can take a week like that and rewrite it and take back control over it. The process of owning the story actually gives you the keys to running the universe. Because the universe, remember we started with a quotation yesterday, the universe is made of stories, not atoms. It's built of archetypes. And in our human experience, all we're doing is translating archetypes by giving them our own meaning and creating them in our world. You want to take back control of your life? Take back control of your story. You deserve a really good story. You deserve a story that includes your value, your power, your creativity, right work, good relationships, health and vitality, all the creativity and expansiveness that you dream of. You deserve it. And you can start calling it in and crafting it by writing a story about it. I really want you to, when you continue writing your story, give yourself 2 to 3 hours and really sit with the story. For those of you who have done this process, like Marcia, how long did it take you? Do you mind hopping out for a second? I'm wondering.
Well, I need to fess up. I am still in the process of writing my story, and I
Ooh,
have pieces of it. And I mean, I've been through the mill recently and right now. So I'm still writing it, and there's at least a base draft. That's my story for now.
good. Good. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Give yourself the gift of taking some time and really coming at the story and playing with it and incorporating all the things that you've been thinking about and continuing to grow and evolve it. So let's end where we started. I'm going to invite you all back into an ask and receive statement. So let's take a deep moment, take a deep breath in this moment. And I want to remind you as you do that, that the heart has more wirings to the brain than the brain has to the heart. When we look at where the heart lives in human design, it's the source of leadership. It's the source of your authentic power. It's the source of your narrative and your direction. It's the source of your connection to source. It's the source of your vitality. It's the source of what you're willing to allow yourself to receive in life. It's the source of compassion and the source of self-love. And it has so much knowledge there for you. Your heart is in charge of your story, not your brain. I want you just to repeat after me. I'm going to make some statements. You just repeat after me. There is a part of my being that already knows exactly how to listen to my heart. That part of my being is willing to inform the rest of me now. It is doing so now with grace and ease. My mind, body, and spirit are receiving this information. Information transfer is now complete. There is a part of my being that already knows exactly how to be sovereign over my own story. That part of my being is willing to inform the rest of me now. It is doing so now with grace and ease. My mind, body, and spirit are receiving this information. Information transfer is now complete. You are cosmic storytellers. Go forth and tell really good stories for yourself, for your loved ones, for your community, and for the world. Thank you all for joining us for these 2 days. Please take a moment, if you will, help me make sure that whatever I'm creating for you is the best that it can be, and fill out the poll for today. Also, when you fill out the poll, we will be choosing 2 participants to receive our tote bag and a signed copy of my brand new book, Quantum Wellness. I also just want to share with you, if you have not ordered Quantum Wellness yet, if you go and order it now, the pre-sale price is $22. When the book comes out, that price is going to go up because the cost of paper has gone up. So if you want to lock in the pre-sale price, go ahead and get it today. In that book, there's story prompts for all the parts of your chart. So we did type today, but there's story prompts in there for the profiles, the centers, and all the gates. So all the parts of your chart, you can use it as an active workbook to really take back control over all the parts of the story that you tell. And be sure, again, if you have any questions, book a call with Hannah. She'll walk you through whatever you might want to explore with her. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so patient. I appreciate that. And thank you to Team Quantum. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Cass. Thank you all for being here. Take good care of yourselves. Bye.